25 states are suing again to stop President Trump's latest election power grab after the Supreme Court cleared the way for his new rules on mail ballots. In a new response this morning, the DOJ is defending the action. We could get a ruling from a federal judge as soon as today, so stay with MS Now because we will be covering that all day. But for now, states must go through a series of added steps to get their mail ballots officially sanctioned by the federal government. And if they don't, or if there's a clerical error along the way, the Postal Service is authorized to just not deliver you a ballot. State officials say the changes are coming way too late in the game. For example, Arizona told the court it'll take 1,280 hours just to learn the new system and upload data. Most Arizona mail ballots go out October 7th, so they have about 40 days to pull this off. Let's discuss with MS Now political analyst and Boston Globe columnist Kimberly Atkins-Stohr and the Reverend Al Sharpton, who is about to celebrate 15 years of Politics Nation on MS Now. Rev, congrats to you, and thank you both for joining me. Kim, I want to start with you as the lawyer among the three of us. Where do you see this case going at this point, right? We've seen it move kind of fast this week, or at least a lot of news coming this fast. What are you watching out for, and how long until this resolved? Because the election's happening no matter what.
Yeah, the way I see this playing out, Eugene, is just chaos. We've seen in this week alone, the order was halted and then it wasn't, but then it could very well, as early as today, be halted again now that the federal government has actually put out these final rules and given the states something to actually hold on to. That the Supreme Court earlier on Monday ruled that it was too early in the game for the states to step in because the rule wasn't even out. Well, now the rule is out, and now we're seeing the litigation really ramp up. There are at least 3 lawsuits that have been filed over this, probably more. But in the meantime, in states, it's absolute chaos. People who run elections don't know what to do. They don't know what the rules will be. They don't even know if they could comply with these new federal rules if they wanted to. And just one last point to remember that these new federal rules are trying to make it harder for people to cast their ballots. It's an effort for the federal government to control who gets to vote by mail. Voting by mail is popular with Democrats and Republicans, but they're trying to control who is able to even use that system. That sounds like a government that is afraid of what the voters will actually say, and they're stepping in to try to put their thumb on the scale.
Rev, you understand probably better than anyone on earth what it is like when a government sows confusion and chaos in an election. Trump has handed unprecedented power to the USPS, power that the Constitution does not give him to give to the USPS. At the very same time, him and his allies have been accused of gutting USPS and defunding them and trying to sabotage the Postal Service. Is that a coincidence? Those kinds of things happening at the same time?
I don't think it's a coincidence at all. I think the fact that he knows that he has, in many ways, gutted postal services means that he knows that the more confusion, the more they can't handle, the more you're disenfranchising voters. And I think that the goal here is not to have a smooth transition. The goal is to disenfranchise voters. The less people that vote, in their opinion, the more they have the possibility of maintaining power for the MAGA movement. So I think that this is a real question of voting rights. As you know, I'm here in Washington today. There's a huge march tomorrow around voting rights that many of us, progressives and establishment, everybody from Hakeem to AOC, are speaking at, because voting rights is under assault. This is just a maneuver. So now we don't say how many jelly beans are in the jar, otherwise you can't vote. Now we play the game at the post office when you must have these qualifications for us to send you a ballot if, in fact, we can give orientation to the postal services on even how to do that. That's the new jelly beans in a jar strategy.
Yeah. Kimberly, I was the kid who was a nerd who wanted to be a lawyer, but didn't want to be a football player, didn't want to be a lawyer. And so, I have always been obsessed with the Constitution and thinking about if it's not in the Constitution, then you can't do it, right? That is kind of how we're all taught, whether we're obsessed with the law and the legal system or we're people who care about civics and we're taught civics. It's not happening anymore. Open the schools. But when you hear that, and we see that the President of the United States has no role in the elections, the Constitution is very clear that the states will operate the elections. Meanwhile, the president has this executive order that calls on the attorney general to prioritize the investigation and potential prosecution of state officials who, quote, issue federal ballots to individuals not eligible to vote in a federal election. It seems like this case should be a slam dunk. The Supreme Court chose not to do it on the merits. They could have. Sometimes they go do that. They make the decision. They are the Supremes. How quickly do you think we're going to get an answer here on what actually the president and the USPS can do in these elections?
Well, I think that depends. I mean, I agree with you that the constitutional issue here seems to be very clear. I think that's why states were so eager to try to block the order from the jump, but the Supreme Court kind of brushed them back, saying that it was too early because they had not suffered any sort of cognizable injury yet since it hadn't gone into effect. Well, now we have a little bit more meat on that bone, and we're seeing these cases be refiled. I have no doubt that judges like Judge Talwani in Massachusetts will move as quickly as possible because the attorneys general are urging that, because this is a crucial matter of time. It's weeks away from the midterm elections. And even if everything was settled and crystal clear, if all the rules to the road were known today, it would probably be difficult to impossible for them to impose it. So the longer it lasts, the more difficult it would be and the more chaos, whatever the ultimate ruling will be. But, in terms of the clearness of the Constitution, I want to get back to that. While the Supreme Court did rule on a procedural issue and didn't get to the merits of it, one of the questions that they have to answer at that procedural stage is whether the government is likely to ultimately succeed on its claim. And it seemed to think that it was, which is one thing that is very concerning to me. Hopefully, if they dig deeper into this, if they give another read to the Constitution, they will see that it's up to the states to carry out elections, as they always have. And I do also hope they step back and see what the ultimate goal here. Rev is absolutely right. This is a disenfranchisement gambit. It's also an effort to give Donald Trump, one of the biggest election deniers that the nation has ever known, more fodder to say, well, see, you can't trust the elections. And even just sowing that doubt in the minds of voters about the election results can pay benefit to him as the way he sees it. But it's so anti-democratic. This is something that happens in places like Russia and Venezuela. This is not the way things are supposed to work in the United States.